Okay, two concerns. Because it's somebody else's house, because it's guys you don't know, because it's guys that have a history of criminal thinking, criminal behavior, well, you gotta look out for these two things. Messing up on the rules so that you get kicked out, and getting caught up in some criminal thinking game, which, you know, here I'm saying how these guys come to the group all ready to do business, but, you know, they bring baggage with them. Sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. It's so habitual that it's just hard for them to switch out of that into normal thinking. That's part of the reason we're there. First, you're going to start to have some healthy, normal relationships with people. People who don't think like criminals all the time. You know, we're already doing some kind of mentoring stuff with them. Those three words are commonality, familiarity, and trust. Let me explain what that's about. Commonality, it's go in there with caution. Even though, as my experience has been, you get talking to these guys and you find so much common ground, so many ways that I like this guy. And your instincts are probably right. There is common ground. There's way more you have in common than you don't. But kind of keep your guard up. Yeah, you have to keep your guard up. Commonality, you've got all these things in common, way more in common than you don't. You know, we're all, probably most of them in there are fathers. They've got some people on the outs they really love and that they miss, and they feel rotten about how they've let them down. There's a lot of commonality. They've probably been, a lot of them you'll find have been digging into their Bible. I mean, they can probably whip out a Bible passage quicker than you can, a lot of them. I've found that a lot. Okay, so there's commonality, and it can produce familiarity. Okay, now we're starting to get into a little different area, and that can end up a false sense of trust, which leads to unhealthy boundaries. I told you the number one rule for sane living I have is acceptance. God's acceptance is not your goal; it's your starting point. Another one of my rules for sane living is love is a gift. Give love away. Forgiveness, it's a gift. Give forgiveness away. Trust is earned. Never give trust away. So we're dealing with people that might feel trustworthy, and you might be right. But keep your guard up anyway. Be cautious. Don't give out your trust freely. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of these unhealthy boundary things. Now, as you get with guys and you're comfortable with them, and that's a good thing. I don't think you don't want to feel uncomfortable. My experience anyway has been they're glad you're there. They want you to feel at home. They'll try to make you feel at home. Yeah, you'll get some exceptions, but for the most part you'll get that. There is a sense of hospitality. I mean, I can't think how it blew me away the first time I was preaching at Milwaukee County Jail. And I was about to start, and all of a sudden a guy comes up to me with a cup of water. Dang, man, nobody ever does that to me in any churches, but this was their custom. Bring a cup of water. You know, Jesus said, bring a cup of cold water in my name. Boom, they're doing it. Okay, so that part's cool, but you can find this sort of thing happening, like little liberties that you might allow from a friend, a punch in the arm, you know, some little thing like that, sure, that's what friends do to each other, but, yeah, but you're in an orange jumpsuit, and I don't want to make too big a deal of that, but I got to make a big deal of that. Okay, you got to kind of watch when these things start to happen. It can lead to little harmless, quote-unquote, harmless bending of the rules. And then when you get down to this stuff about special favors, now you know you got a problem. A guy that you've been talking with and it seems like he's just, you're on the same wavelength, and he asks you something like, I ran out of stamps and I really got to get a letter to my wife, can you mail this for me? or something along those lines. Okay, now he's gone a little too far. Now, I don't know what all they're gonna tell you. Has an orientation been scheduled yet with the Manitowoc County Jail? Have they talked about that yet?
No, I've talked with the coordinator of the jail, and
Okay.
he part of it, he doesn't want it to be too high of a number so that you don't have to do this with too many people, but with the understanding that you want to still have a good amount of people involved, you don't want to be sending people away, so I think the idea was to have these training sessions and then see who's going to be committed to want to do it, and then go with that step.
Okay. This, any facility I've ever been in, they have in their orientation, they explain some of the things. Okay, you don't do things like mail anything for an inmate. You don't make a phone call for him. They'll lay that out, and keep those in mind. And when somebody asks you to do that, we got a problem here. He's stepping over some lines.
Yeah, I don't know if, am I gonna be mailing something illegal?
Sure. Exactly. They want to know what's coming in and out through the mail. So yeah, you don't want to bypass that.
And if all else fails, give them a postage stamp.
And you might not even be able to do that.
Okay.
That depends on different facilities, different rules about what can be brought in and out. And you may get kicked out. And worst case scenario, you could even be prosecuted. I've seen it. Well, yeah, I have seen that happen. Not any of my volunteers, but yes, it happens. Okay, stuff that it might seem obvious. I hope it seems obvious, but just keep in mind, you don't give personal contact information, your phone number, your address, your email. Don't. If you're handing anything out, and some different facilities have different rules about what can be handed out and what can't. Just got to be careful that you're not giving somebody something that has your contact information on it. When you're talking to people, be a little cagey about how specific you get about describing your situation. My colleague Joe Radzik was saying that, let's see, how did this work? Somebody, I think it was one of our volunteers recently, his mother died, and this is a prison volunteer, I forget, a corrections volunteer. He was going and doing things in a corrections facility. His mother died, and he had mentioned this in his group, which that part's okay, but somehow he'd mentioned something specific enough that on the day of the funeral, some flowers arrived, and they traced him back. The source was from this inmate. He knew who this woman was, where her funeral was going on. Somehow he was able to piece that together. I mean, no harm done in a sense, but still, that was a little too close to home. He was able to connect those dots.
Did they allow newspapers in the prison? If they did, he
Okay.
could get the
Sure.
obituary.
Exactly, yeah.
And my name's Todd Bergman. My parents died. Oh,
Right, yeah.
it's in the paper, yeah.
Yeah, and some
Or
of
even
that's...
it's on and even here, the local radio stations run the obituaries, so.
Okay. And some of it's inevitable, and yeah, you can't prevent everything. You just gotta be.
Don't ask me how the flower.
Yeah, somehow he got word to somebody and said, "Would you please?" I don't know how it all worked, but it was a little startling. My mother's funeral, and there's flowers coming from a prison inmate. Yeah.
I suggest we give our last name, full name, and what church we're from.
Now that's every facility has different rules about that too. For a long time, I thought the best policy at all my groups was to call myself Phil or Pastor Phil. They want us in the department, the State Department of Correction. They say no last names. They're trying to maintain some distance between you and the inmates. So no last names only. The guy you're talking to is Mr. Hernandez. You are Pastor Merton. Now that's the state. State facilities. You're talking about going into a county facility, which has its own rules. Yeah, all of us have heard that and said, well, if they're worried about confidentiality, isn't it harder to trace Phil than Pastor Merton? Couldn't you trace that a lot more easily? But that's their rules. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd say if you had anybody with a phone book and find Pastor Pope, Pastor
Sure.
Hedrick.
Sure. Yeah. Granted, there's a lot of information that they are not given access to. You know, they don't have the internet. There's a lot of things they can't, dots they can't connect. It's harder for them anyway, but, you know, creative little minds. But yeah, Jim.
Last time we talked about the Manitowoc jail, they're more short-term people
Mhm.
than long-term. Lord willing, this ministry will bear fruit so that we can
Yeah.
minister to them more than just 2 or
Right.
3 months, but within the wells for the rest of their lives.
Mhm.
How do we transition from ministering to them in the jail and get them connected with the truth
Ooh.
outside the
Yes.
jail without giving information we shouldn't be giving? How would we transition like that?
Yeah, the time comes when, you know, a guy is getting out and he's coming back into the community and we want to help him come back into the community. You know, and you're in a good position being in a county jail ministry. You have some things going for you that all of us who are doing stuff in the state facilities don't have. I think I told you about the fraternization rules they have there, that if you're ministering to a person in a state facility, once he walks out the door, you gotta go hands off. Those are the rules for, I think, 2 years. You're not supposed to have contact with that, or, you know, no more than incidental contact. So, yeah, we got this relationship going, we've got something great going on. He trusts me, but now hands off. Well, you don't have that in a county facility. I doubt very, I've never seen a county facility set up rules like that. You'll have to check to make sure. But yeah, you want to encourage them. I want you to connect with the Christian community. In fact, I like our Christian community, the one you connect with. Come on in. So yeah, sooner or later. they're
What
gonna-
could we tell them?
Depends on what the facility allows. Whenever you can, I think, you know, tell them, here's my church. Please come to my church. It's not, you know, here's another thing with it, the crazy incongruity with what you tell, what you're allowed to tell them, what you're not allowed to tell them. I don't know if I mentioned how one of my guys, one of my volunteers, he knew that some of the inmates he was ministering to had, they're poor, they need food and clothes help, and my congregation has a food pantry and a clothes pantry. Can I tell his family to come here? And he was told by the DOC, no, you don't have contact with an inmate's family. But they said, it's okay though if you give that inmate information about your church and about their programs, then he can pass it on to his family. That's good. Okay, so either way, information is getting out there. It's just odd things, workarounds that you have to do. But yeah, you want to connect with the families, you want to connect with the communities, and a lot of it just depends on what the facility allows. You have to find that out.
So I guess what it comes down to is you shouldn't be willingly offering information, but information, obviously at the age that we live in, people are gonna get access
Sure.
to stuff, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just
Right.
use common sense and
Yeah.
you don't offer stuff.
Exactly.
That's about all you can do.
And two, you don't want to leave be careful you don't leave a paper trail that you don't want to get kicked out. And if something goes sideways and they trace it back to you, and well, this is because you left some information you shouldn't have left, well, then you're out of that facility and maybe subject to prosecution. So yeah, you gotta be cautious. But boy, I really appreciate what you said there, Jim, but we don't want to be hands off. I mean, sure, right now, while they're in prison, we want to kind of keep a little distance, but we want time to come when that distance, ideally, we don't have that distance. You're sitting in the pew next to me, you're praising God right next to me, and this is how it's supposed to be. We are working toward that time, but we've got to do it the right way and the right timing.
I think it's gonna be something where, okay, if they're ready to leave, okay, where in this county are you going to be living when you get out?
Sure,
The nearest church is
sure.
blank, and, or maybe even call the pastor and say, hey, I prefer this person to you. And they can take it from there, and you know, if this person is seriously interested and he's living in downtown Manitowoc and doesn't have a car, he's not gonna come out here or come out to Trinity. He's going to be down at First German or maybe Bethany or Emmanuel or one of those churches in the older area of Manitowoc.
Yeah, that'd be the great thing, if you could set up a network like that, welcoming network, that's, yeah, be thinking about that, how can we do that? It's something that as they step out, something we've done in Milwaukee, one of the guys in my staff started something he called Midnight Ministries. It's called that because for a long time, Milwaukee County's policy was when a guy is being released from a Milwaukee County Corrections facility, that's done at midnight. Reason being, there's the county gets money from, I forget if it's the state or the feds, for every day that an inmate is locked up. So if you are in jail at 12:01 a.m., that counts as a day the county gets its money and get out of here. We got our money, we don't want you no more. So a bus rolled in at sometime soon after midnight at 9th and State downtown Milwaukee, and everybody get out of here, we're done with you. Most people have family waiting for them, but some don't. And if you got arrested in May and now it's December, you don't have a coat with you, isn't the county's concern. So one of the guys in my staff started something called the Midnight Ministry. He was there to meet him. You know, just kind of like greeting somebody coming back from overseas military service. It's welcome back to the community. Here's a sandwich if you're hungry. Here's a bottle of water if you're thirsty. Here's a jacket if you're cold, and here's a list of resources around churches that would be glad to help you out. Here's a Bible. Trying to help people make that transition, because it's not an easy transition. So anything you guys can brainstorm about that and help people out with that coming back into Manitowoc County.
You talk about connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to the Manitowoc facility a number of times on
Okay.
the positive side of the one-way glass.
Okay.
And it's surprising who you see who's in there.
Mm-hmm.
People I've supervised.
Okay.
So the dots are gonna get connected
Sure.
like immediately.
Yeah.
Do you find that in something like Milwaukee, or I mean, how are we gonna deal with that?
Okay, and there's another thing where I'm gonna defer to when you get orientation. Different facilities have different rules about that. Some places will tell you if somebody comes in the facility who's family member, or they'll spell it out, hopefully, what degree of relationship they consider significant. If they come in and they've got that relationship with you, they may ask you to report that to whoever you answer to, and I'm not sure how that's gonna work out. I don't know if is there a chaplain for the Manitowoc County Jail, or would you be reporting to the jail supervisor? They will tell you who you report to, and they may ask you to do that. I wouldn't be surprised. But it's up to the facility to determine what's a significant relationship and what's the procedure there. So, yeah, you'll find that happening most, yeah.
I'm a newspaper writer. What if I got somebody who I've written about
Mm-hmm.
for when he was arrested, his preliminary hearing, his trial, his sentencing? I've written about this guy in the paper for the last 6 months, or a year, 3 years, whatever it takes to go through the court system. Is that a problem?
Shouldn't be,
Okay.
yeah. You wrote the things, or
Yeah.
people read the things?
Yeah.
I've had that happen where guys will be talking to me and say, well, I assume you read all about me, and no, actually I didn't, but, he was well aware he's a notorious figure. So, yeah, people know stuff. That's great.
I think they generally allow inmates to tell you what area they're planning to live when they're let out.
Oh, yeah. The inmate, sure, they can say that. Definitely.
And again, I mean, if they're interested, if they don't want that connection, well, then we can't help it.
Exactly, yeah. Right, And this may be a ministry like what Philip did with the Ethiopian eunuch. You're with him for this intense ministry for a very short period of time, and then you never see him again. And you go your way rejoicing. You don't know. Now, hopefully it'll be longer term than that, but who knows? Okay. Here's one other thing to keep in mind. Being cautious about what you say. As you get to know a guy, if you deal with him over a period of weeks, you might get to feel like, no, I think I can trust this guy. And your instincts may be right. Here's the problem though. This guy is living 24/7 with some very untrustworthy people. And if this guy knows something about you, this trustworthy guy knows something about you, and he lets it slip, it comes out in a conversation, or he leaves a piece of material laying out, and one of the untrustworthy guys gets a hold of it, well, you could have a problem. So just keep in mind, it's not just the guys in your group you're dealing with, there are the people they associate with. And they're not trustworthy people, they're criminals, for goodness sake. So you gotta keep that in mind. Just be aware. Something that Tommy Thomas, he was my supervisor for many years at Racine Correctional Institution. He tells people, make sure that your deepest needs are met before you come in. Don't come into prison looking for the inmates to meet your deepest needs. Come with your tank full. Don't come needy. So don't look to get validated. Emotional, spiritual, sexual, relational. Check yourself before you come in. Am I going in there needy in some of these areas? And if so, the wrong people, they got a nose for that. They got an instinct. And they may end up trying to exploit that crack in the armor. I don't know how specific I need to be with that, but just be thinking about that. Because I really enjoy the company of these guys. I'll admit that. I just so love conversation with them. I love hearing their insights and their experiences. I just so enjoy these guys that could turn into a weakness for me real easily. That I'm enjoying them so much that, oh gosh, the chance of them not liking me as much as I like them, well, I don't want to risk that. Okay, that could be a weakness. That's something I always have to watch out with myself. Just the kind of thing to be aware of with yourself. Where are my weaknesses? Where am I looking for validation from people? And if so, just be cautious. Okay, those are all about unhealthy boundaries. Now, having healthy boundaries. Okay, if you're talking with somebody and something doesn't feel right, trust that. Your gut may be telling you something that you need to know. Again, it's going to help if you got your tank full. If you're not coming in there needy, you come in there as a whole, complete person, then, and something weird goes down, it's going to feel weird. And just be aware, even if you can't put your finger on it, something doesn't feel right here. And when that happens, if somebody's, say, making a request of you, wanting something or other that this wasn't covered in the rule books, but I don't know, this just doesn't feel right. Okay. You don't have to explain or defend yourself. Just saying no is a very valid approach there. And my experience has been that I've hardly had anybody argue with me on that. Somebody asks me to do something and I say no. I hardly had anybody get excited about that. And just fall back on the fact that the institution doesn't allow it. I want to stay a volunteer here, and I know that would violate the rules. I might lose my ability to come in here, so I'd rather not do it for that reason. That's fine. They'll accept that. I don't know if you did with your kids when they were starting to get independent and starting to go to parties, did you do that thing where you offered them, look, if things are getting, if you're uneasy with the situation and you want to get out of there, blame me. Just go ahead and tell your friends, oh, my mom is making me come home. My dad says I can't stay out any longer. I gotta go home. Go ahead, blame us. Just get out of there. You know, do the same thing with the institution. You know, I'd like to, but the rules say. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. Now, the boundaries are not borders. They're not fences. Yes, you're you and you have your world and I have mine, but our worlds are adjacent and they have so much in common. And that's don't lose sight of that. You know, when Paul says in Romans, rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. You'll find these are my brothers. These are guys I'm going to be spending forever with. And man, I'm glad I've got a head start in this. I so much enjoy being part of their world and they in my world. I mean, sure, there's parts of our world we don't share, but yet they're happy, I'm happy. They're grieving, I'm grieving. You know, don't neglect that. And then familiarity has to be managed. In Philippians, my prayer that you'll love me abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. Use your insight. Love has to be managed to some degree. Love and discernment go together. Love doesn't mean you're a sucker. Knowing the policies of the place. Like I said, when you get in there and then you get your orientation, there's a lot of questions you're going to have. They'll probably be answered right away. You know, like, what do I report? If I know the guy, does it obligate me to report it? To a family member, does that disqualify me from being a volunteer until they're out of there? You know, what are the policies? You got to find that stuff. And they should explain that to you. And whatever they give you at the orientation, hold on to it. In your packet, in the folder I gave you, on the right-hand side, you just find the staple thing there. It says DAI, Volunteer Orientation Manual. This comes out of the state's volunteer orientation policy and procedures thing they put out a couple of years ago. Now this is state. Again, you're going into a county facility. These are not your rules. I'm giving them to you for a couple of reasons. One, because it kind of gives an example of what corrections facilities expect of people. Two, it has some really useful information. I'm not going to go over all this right now, but you see that in the middle of the page it talks about anatomy of a setup. Most of the people, again, that you're dealing with they're there because they're glad you're there and they want to connect with Jesus. Some of them, you know, they brought some baggage with them and they find themselves slipping into old habits of hustling whoever comes their way. And some of them are just, you might run into these guys who are just cynically trying to play you. So just be aware, this is kind of some helpful information there that what happens if you're getting set up. And you know, I said before about bending the rules. A person can't even use that as leverage against you. Oh, remember how you did me that little favor? Well, I might just let slip that you did that for me, unless you do something else for me. And you know, there you're being blackmailed. It could happen. I've never had it happen, but it's possible. Just be cautious. Let's see. There's a few things else in here that I just want to call your attention to. Oh, you can see on the back page. This is kind of enlightening. These are actual examples of things that volunteers have gotten disciplined or expelled for. And I've seen it happen. It's happened a couple of times to people in my staff and my volunteer force. They've lost their privileges because of some of these things. Just look over a couple of these. Like, okay, that first one. One guy, it was so sad. He just wasn't keeping his guard up, not thinking, okay, he was operating by common sense alone, and that's not enough. You have to know the rules. Number one, he had made some appointments with some guys, he was gonna come in and see him, had to break the appointment, something came up, so he wrote to them and said, sorry, I'm gonna miss this. That was forbidden, you don't have personal correspondence with an inmate. You know, purely innocent, but he was thinking, but he just wasn't thinking, that was the problem. And he got kicked out of that facility. Some of these others, you know, go down to number 9. I'm going to talk about this a few times as we go through this. Using a Bible study to denigrate other faith groups, women, sexual preference, etc. Okay. You have to watch this. How do we talk about people who believe different than we do? How do you talk about it? You see the word denigrate there? I mean, this is what we're trying to avoid. You know, it's inevitable that it's going to come up. Well, they believe this, we believe that. And that's okay. Nobody is going to have a problem with that. It's how you say it. You know, can we say this without putting them down, without judging them? That's going to be our challenge, because if and correction facilities don't like that, they want everybody to play nice in the sandbox, and if they feel that you're not, you could lose your volunteer privileges. So be thinking about that. Yeah, here's another one. Just 26. This is another sad one. One of our one guy who was going into facilities, good intentions, bad idea. He was helping with a restorative justice group, and I don't know if you're familiar with that at all. Restorative justice, something that's been going past 10, 15 years ago, this got started. Trying to get people who are doing time for some crime, make them more aware of the impact of their crime. Okay, you're doing time for it, but there's other people who are still hurting because they're too, the victims and the community. Anyway, he was facilitating, this guy who was working with us, he was facilitating a restorative justice group. Unfortunately, one of the guys in his group, he said, "Oh, I know his victims. And I bet they would be thrilled to hear that he's feeling bad about what he's done, and he's coming to this group." So he told them. He got a hold of them and said, "You'll be happy to hear that so-and-so, the guy who did this crime against you, is now in this restorative justice group." They were not happy to hear. They didn't want to hear the guy's name ever again. And they let the facility know about that, and this guy was kicked out. And I said, good intentions. He thought he was doing them a favor, but no, just don't do that stuff. Otherwise, let's see, one other thing about this, flip to that front page. That paragraph that starts out, one example is personal beliefs about secular nature of DOC's AODA treatment. Okay, a lot of alphabet soup there. DOC is Department of Correction, AODA is alcohol and other drug addiction. I think somebody brought that up. I'm not sure if it was relating to this exactly, but that questionnaire I had people fill out ahead of time. What are your interests? What's your experiences? Somebody brought up how he was visiting somebody who, whatever the treatment program, the psychological treatment program that the guy was undergoing, he thought it was just terrible. Okay. Watch how you address that. When they mentioned it, I know the situation they're talking about here, when they brought this thing up about AODA, because there's one situation in particular over at Prairie du Chien where they had an addiction treatment program going in the prison, and it was based around a lot of psychology, 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And somebody from a local church, wasn't one of ours, but somebody from a local church was coming and doing volunteer work, and he just had nothing but contempt for any psychological approach or the 12-step approach to addiction. And he was very open about his contempt for that. And as a result of that, well, his volunteer status was revoked. And it made it almost impossible for anybody to come in from a church and say, we'd like to offer addiction help to guys. I mean, that's my thing. I help start and facilitate addiction programs. I love looking at 12-step recovery and putting it together with what the Bible says about staying sane and sober. But Prairie du Chien was not going to allow that because they had that bad experience with somebody coming in and putting down their program. So,
I guess the kind of a general rule is you don't put down the host.
yeah,
You
come
don't put
on, yeah.
into the program, or, you know,
Sure.
say anything, you know, bad about the sheriff or the county executive or the
Right,
governor or
right.
whatever, it may be convenient to do so,
Yeah,
don't.
yeah, I've got some opinions about my county sheriff and all the programs he runs, and I have to watch how I say it. In fact, better say nothing, Phil. Okay, but you got that hand out there, and keep it handy. Look it over and just see, again, that's the state. It's not Manitowoc County, but give you some idea of what's going on. Okay, I mentioned that already. Don't disrespect or denounce other religious groups. Talk about, sure, you're gonna end up talking about them, but do it respectfully. It can be done. Don't put down the staff, don't put down facility policies and procedures. I had something the other day, actually, one of the guys in my group was in one of the facilities programs, and he was sneering about how, yeah, they want me to be, let's see, what do they call it? Self-mastery. They're trying to promote self-mastery, and you know, I'm not having anything to do with that, because Jesus is my master, not self-mastery. And I was listening to them thinking, okay, I think I know where he's coming from, but well, look what Paul says in 2 Timothy about God giving us a spirit of self-discipline. So look at it that way, why don't you? Try that on for a second. When you hear self-mastery, think, well, yeah, God gives me a spirit of self-discipline. I'm not at the mercy of my impulses. I have something to say about my own thoughts and my own feelings. Okay, so I think that helped him some, and so that's a way that we do a service to these facilities. We're doing them a favor, and hopefully the more they see that, the more they're going to welcome us. I'm helping this guy take part in his treatment program. Okay, so you're going to find stuff. They're going to complain about, people you're working with, they're going to complain about things they don't like about the treatment programs that they're being saddled with. I say encourage them to look for what's good there. Eat the watermelon, spit out the seeds, it's okay. It won't kill you. Another miscellaneous thing, just word to the wise. I don't think I've ever seen this in a policy manual, but keep it in mind. If you're going in the evening, don't have a beer or a glass of wine with dinner. Don't do it. Somebody will smell it on you. I know one of our volunteers is asked to go home one night just because, you know, just have a beer with dinner. And the supervisor said, no, go home. And even if they hadn't, the other guys, you know, because we're dealing with, the majority of the people that we're working with have a problem with alcohol and drugs. They haven't learned that discernment that, you know, it's okay, not everybody's like me, not everybody's an alcoholic, one beer is okay, but, you know, they could be saying, well, here, he's talking a good game, but look at him, he's just like me. You know, that kind of thinking can go on, plus, it can just take them back to a place they don't want to be. Yeah, I hear you're talking this Jesus talk, but all I can think about now is, man, I wish I had a beer. It brings in complications you don't want to bring in, so just be aware of that. And anytime you have doubts, know who your supervisor is, the facility supervisor. But I don't know how they work in Manitowoc, but it'll be if there's a chaplain or a volunteer program coordinator. They will probably tell you at your orientation, here's your supervisor, here's how to contact me. And feel free to do that. And, you know, I'll be glad, if I can, I'll answer any questions I can, so will the other people on my staff. But it's the guy who's closest to the ground who's gonna be your first line. Okay, any questions or any thoughts, any ideas so far?